2018 in no change, implementing NIST SP 800-63B for real, and I've added the byline still working on it because this is work in progress. So first of all, in this talk, I will be talking about the NIST standard for just a brief moment. I will be talking about a cost-benefit analysis that I've done at the organization where I work. I will be talking a little bit about the user experience, about the design elements that are needed to make things work smoothly. A bit of communications on, when you are going to change your policy, how you should communicate that to your users, to your guests, to your external partners, whoever you're dealing with in terms of password policies. And of course, I will also be talking a little bit about privacy in all of this, related to the GDPR, which we have in the European Union. Now, first a little bit about the NIST standard, which is kind of important. And I guess you've heard about it. I hope that you've read it as well. And the big changes that we saw with the new NIST standard was that it basically said that we should stop doing regular password change. We should stop enforcing that upon end users. It also says that we should probably move away from the complexity requirements, like you have to use a fixed number of uppercase and lowercase and special characters and emojis and DNA samples and numbers in there, and instead we should just opt in for considering length as strength by itself, because a long password, even if you think it's easy, a long password is a strong password. I should also give you some background information about myself and also the organization that I work for. So my obsession for more than 20 years now have been passwords and anything that you can basically relate to digital authentication, including biometrics, two-factor authentication, and so on. By day, I'm working as a Chief Security Officer of Nordic Choice Hotels, which is a hotel chain based in Northern Europe. Specifically, we are now represented in 5 countries. We have an approximate 18,000 employees, and that was before the Corona crisis hit us. And you can find us in approximately 210 different geographical locations throughout the Nordics. More interesting is that we have approximately 170 different nationalities working for us. So among our staff, you will find people that speak all kinds of languages, and also in many cases, they don't speak the local language of the country they're working in, and in some cases also their English will not be, it will not be good, to say the least. And also from a security perspective, it's also very important for me to say in this setting that we have an annual turnover of staff of approximately 50%, sometimes a little bit above. We're working trying to reduce it a little bit. This has to do especially with, first of all, seasonal staff that comes in, like waiters and housekeeping staff and so on. And the other one is that a lot of jobs in the hospitality industry, in hotels and bars and restaurants, are also a lot for young people working part-time as part of their, while they're also studying at university and so on. And last but not least, I have to also state this, which is also very important. We are in the hospitality business. We are not an IT company per se, and we are most definitely not a security company. So even though security awareness and physical security especially is very important to us, you can't, we can't, I can't expect from our staff to be IT security experts. On the opposite, actually. So some of the main points that were important to me when I wanted to implement the new NIST standard in our company was to remove the regular password change. For years and years and years, I've been asking people, if there's anything you would like to get rid of when it comes to passwords, what would it be? And the answer is almost always the same. Please make it stop forcing me to change my password all the friggin' time. Second, I wanted to change or sort of remove the complexity requirements. There are way too many of them out there, even today in our company and also online. You can find them everywhere, all kinds of crazy complexity requirements. And in most cases, they totally destroy the user experience, like make it really, really bad. And also, we do know that in many cases, enforcing strong complexity requirements actually makes the passwords much worse. I also wanted to implement a block filter. Basically, that is a word list of forbidden passwords that you will no longer be allowed to use. I also set up, when I started working for the company 3 years ago, I set up domain subscriptions for the Have I Been Pwned domain service. It's a free service. It's an excellent service set up by Troy Hunt. And it allows you as a company to receive notifications whenever an email address associated with your company's domain name is being found in data breaches, which is collected by Troy Hunt and put into the service. Highly recommended service, and if you don't use it yet, you really, really should, or find a similar service to use. But before you implement something like that, there's also some things you need to think about regarding the privacy of your employees and your customers, and I will talk about that a little bit later. There was also a question about whether I should be doing any kind of password auditing, and if yes, then how should I do it? When should I do it? Who should be allowed to basically try to crack your password? That is an important question from a security perspective and also from a privacy perspective. And last but not least, I find it also very important to inform our staff, our employees, my colleagues, that we are now changing the policy, and some parts of the changes are positive changes. But I also knew that I wanted to increase the minimum length from the previous 8-character length minimum to 15 characters. Now, a lot of friends, colleagues and so on have approached me like, are you crazy? Length 15 as a minimum? That sounds crazy, that is not necessary. Well, my reasoning is that it may not be necessary, but increasing the length to 15 will also help people in, migrating from a password into passphrases. And what I keep telling people is that for passphrase, you should be using a simple, positive sentence that is easy to remember. You can, of course, use spaces between the words, punctuation, and all that kind of stuff. So I was born and raised in Norway. Well, maybe not the best passphrase, but it's, to me, an easy passphrase to remember. So, to ease in this process of implementing a new password policy based on the NIST standards, I also got some help from Microsoft last year in 2019, when they, in April 2019, announced that they want to kill password expiration as part of their best practice and hardening guidelines for Windows and for Windows servers. And in May 2019, they actually announced the new hardening guidelines, and one of the key points in there was, yes, finally, they do recommend you to turn off the regular enforced password change. Now, to me again, I just want to make a note that in March 2016, Laurie Kramer from Carnegie Mellon University, at the time serving at the Federal Trade Commission in the US, wrote a blog post saying that we should rethink mandatory password change. To me, that was a game changer when that came out approximately a year before the new NIST standard, and I think that article by itself helped a lot around the world. And all the way back in December 2012, when I did PasswordsCon at University in Oslo here in Norway, in my talk there, I also talked about, we should at least extend the change frequency from the normal 1, 2, 3 months to at least 13 months or more. The reason for that is that my password research for several years within the companies and customers that I had showed that people would very often use the names of months or weekdays. So by improving the change frequency, like extending it to 13 months or more, I thought that I could reduce the use of months, years, and weekday names in passwords. I also looked around for a password filter. There is still an ongoing discussion now in 2020 on what do you mean about block list? How big should it be? Should we block them? Should we just use it for auditing, for risk monitoring, and so on? Now, this is not a discussion for this talk, but what I did was to implement the open password filter. It's an open source project you can find on GitHub. The link is on the slide. And what I did not implement a standard sort of block list found on the internet. I implemented, basically made it up myself, a short, targeted and localized word list that is applicable to our environment. Remember, we are based in Norway, in Finland, in Sweden and Denmark as the four main countries of our hotel chain, and we have our local languages. So a lot of the common passwords that you can find on the internet may not be applicable to our users at all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is probably the most common password on the internet. It may be used at some of our services as well, or at least maybe it was being used several years ago. But we also have words in our local language that are not common on the internet, but may be very common in our environment, and I want to block them. The reason for that is, of course, if somebody actually wants to do a target attack against us, I will expect them to build a targeted, localized word list which is applicable to the attack against our services. Now, Cormac Hurley of Microsoft Research have previously written a paper with some other co-authors about block lists, and his basic recommendation is that you should implement a block list which contains up to 10,000 words, or passwords if you like. These are the most common on the internet. One of the things that I think some people may have gotten a bit wrong here is that that recommendation is applicable for online password guessing attacks. Like somebody's trying to log into your account, Facebook account, online, typing in those passwords, or using a very simple robot to automate the process. But for offline cracking, where you can do millions and billions and trillions of password attempts per second, such a block list is not going to help you at all, in my opinion. Now, for the domain search service from Have I Been Pawned and Troy Hunt, again, here's a screenshot of what it looks like. Sign up, try it out. You will find this useful. I'm very, very certain of that. But there are some questions that we need to ask. There are some discussions that we have yet, to start and to finish and come to some sort of conclusion. And these are very important to me. First of all, and this is a good question that was raised by Alexandra, who spoke at PasswordsCon in University of Cambridge in UK in 2015. Is it ethically and legally okay for us to find, download, trade, purchase, monetize, sell, refine, study, audit and block based on data which are essentially and illegally obtained copies of property from whatever service or company or organization you can find? That's a question not just for the academics and the lawyers to answer to. I would really like to hear your opinion on this one as well. And does our noble goals as hackers or, white hat hackers or pen testing teams or blue teams, does it justify what we are trying to do to collect and use these data because we have such noble goals in life and in work life? Can I ask to see, correct, and delete my data from your breach database because I don't want to be in there. In accordance with GDPR in the EU, if you are handling data, if you are in any way offering any kind of service to people in the EU, you also need to comply with GDPR. You need to allow me to see my data, correct my data, and delete them free of charge. And that's a tough one to do. And if you for some reason think that whatever you're doing today does not, GDPR does not apply to you or your company, well, let's look into that. Probability is pretty big that you actually need to comply with GDPR. So again, back to the good news. We are changing our password policy, and from now on, you will never have to change your password ever again. Perfect. Sounds really, really good. But I was also going to tell people that, and we are changing the minimum length from 8 characters to 15 characters. It could be 14, it could have been 10 or 12 or something more than 8. Now, one of the things I've been trying out, I've been walking up to strangers in the street asking this question, actually, just showing off my obsession with this topic. And I've been asking them, would you like to never change your password again? And people, of course, yes, I would love to. And then I asked, okay, but if I allow you to never change your password again, is it then okay that I increase the minimum length from, say, 8 characters, 7 characters to, say, 15 characters? Well, yeah, that's acceptable. I can do that. Because the main problem I've got with passwords is that I have to change them all the friggin' time, and I have to come up with new, very creative passwords that the system will accept. And then I have tried the other way around, asking people, hey, some really great news here. We are going to change the minimum length requirement from 8 characters to 15 characters. And they're like, beep. And then I tell them that, yeah, I know that's annoying, but in return, you don't have to change your password again. And they're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to take that one. Sorry. So I was very specific to my colleagues that we need to communicate the good news first, like you do not have to change your password ever again. Well, obviously, in case the password is compromised, and it can be proven to be compromised, then you need to change it. And of course, people do understand that. So to me, I went for the good news first. And I think that is a general principle to do the good news first. And then, when we implemented these things and we sent out information to our colleagues that we are changing the password policy, I was really curious to see what happens now. And what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. That is, people change their passwords, yes, they were forced to do that, but nobody complained about the new policy. Nobody came to me and said, thank you for changing the policy, now I don't have to change my password ever again. And now, more than 2 years since we implemented the new policy, not a single person have come up to me and said like, I can't even remember the last time I changed my password. That was a bit fascinating because, I have never done this process and taken this process so far before. So in this case, it was really interesting to see that basically nothing happened. There was no feedback whatsoever from end users unless I essentially pulled it out of them. Now, before you can do this, here's a good suggestion. Do a cost-benefit analysis and show that off to your management, to your boss. And how do you do that? Well, what is a cost-benefit analysis? Well, it doesn't have to be difficult. So here's my highly scientific, absolutely proven model. 1 hour of lost productivity for each case seems a reasonable estimate. That is a case of I lost my password. Because when I can't remember my password, I will give it a couple of attempts, then I will go get coffee because it's Monday morning, very typical day and time of forgetting your password, get coffee, talk to some colleagues, which might not be a productive use of time. Then I'll get back to my computer and make a few more attempts before I eventually surrender to the IT crowd down in the basement, the people that are working in rooms with no windows and the lights turned off, and they are all white pale and have a slight green tint from the screen light on the monitors. And you need to contact them. You have to call them. Preferably, of course, help desk need to identify who you are to make sure that you're not doing any kind of social engineering attack. I also recommend that a help desk should not only verify the user, they also need to sort of check the account status, like, is this account actually locked? Or have there been many failed login attempts over the past couple of minutes or half an hour from the user they are talking to? Or again, could this be sort of a social engineering attack against help desk, which is a very common attack method. When they've done that, they have to do the password reset. Okay, so they reset your account password, and how are they going to give that password to you? There are many ways you can do that, of course. And you will also usually say that, well, this is a password set by help desk, but as soon as you log in, you have to change your password into whatever password you want to use, so that only you know your own password. I don't want there to be any risk of help desk actually knowing your password for almost any period of time, be it 5 minutes or less even. And when all this is done, the user can get back to being productive and working on the computer. And again, my conservative estimate is that this entire process is 1 hour, maybe more, of lost productivity to the company. That's what I told my managers, and they said, we'll take your word for it. So what I did, I talked to our help desk staff, excellent people, and I said, I want to know about the number of password resets that we are getting in a week, in a day, in a month, in a full year. I want statistics if you have it, and if you can break it down on countries or different hotels, or if you can break it down on, gender, because I'm curious, or at least by different application types and operating systems and databases and so on. And they had some of these data. They didn't have the gender-specific data, which I would be interested in, but they did have a lot of very useful statistics for me. Now, on this slide, what you're seeing here are, on the right-hand side, you can see some of the different systems that we have and the number of created incidents that are related to passwords. In most cases, these will be, of course, I forgot my password, I need a new one. It could also be a case of, here's a new user and you need to set up the account and create a password for that user. So it's not completely scientifically correct. And as you can see, the major problem to users when it comes to password resets is Active Directory. And obviously because the vast majority of people are using Windows computers. And for other applications that you can see on the list, there are not maybe that many people. But in a good second place, we have time management, which is being used by a lot of staff in hotels to report their work hours. And in some cases, we have staff that will only log on to a computer once a month, and that is only to enter their work hours, and that's it. So they use the account, they use the password only once a month. Then I can understand that it might be easy to forget it. And also if the policy says that the password needs to change every month, then the only time per month they use the password, they also have to change it and remember it for a full month until the next time they use it. Not anything close to good user experience. Now this report that I also got from Help Desk shows created tickets from the ticketing system that we're using at the time. And we've been looking for words here in English, password, passord, which is Norwegian, or løsenord, which is Swedish word for password. And you can see on the left-hand side, you can see the year and the created number of incidents. Now, 2014 is when we got a new ticketing system for help desk, so 331 is not correct here. It's just for a few months from that year. It is also important to say here that the number of employees have been increasing for every year going since I started, and even from before that as well. And we implemented the policy in 2018, and you can see in 2019, even though that is not the complete year, the number of created tickets have decreased. It didn't decrease as much as I want to, but there are reasons for that as well. But you can also see on this slide that there have been a significant decrease in the number of cases per month. And this statistics also shows that July 2019 was, a sort of a slow month in terms of number of password reset cases, because people are on vacation mostly during July. But again, the most important part, the decrease in number of cases. And we also have statistics on the average resolution time. Now, this of course isn't sort of correct, because we don't use like upwards to 13-14 days to resolve a case of lost password. But this is from the time it was created until somebody at help desk actually closed the case. But again, the statistics shows a very positive development in this area. We are getting much faster at dealing with all these cases, fixing it and closing the case. So to me, as a cost-benefit goal, I said that I want to reduce the number of password reset cases by at least 50%. That will save us a lot of man hours at help desk, there's no doubt about that, but it will also increase productivity, in my opinion, and it will increase user happiness, because people don't have to, struggle with the password policy changes and all that stuff all the time. They will be able to concentrate on their work instead, which is what they are being measured by. And of course, this will decrease the use of painkillers and reduce, I think, the workplace violence against security staff. And, I hope we can agree that's a good thing. Back to the, also the NIST standard, it also says that you should, try to not use SMS for two-factor authentication. We are using that today, and unfortunately, I don't see any easy way of getting out of it. Two-factor authentication is very, very important to use for your services, especially all services that are available online on the internet that you are using with either different service providers or on-premise hosted by yourself. A story here from our company is that when I started, we were implementing the Google two-factor authentication by SMS service. We are a major Google G Suite user, and I got a challenge pretty much the first day at work. I was being told that we have some employees that are refusing to hand over their phone number to us as an employer, because it was a personal phone, and the subscription, the phone subscription, was also paid by the employees. And they said, we don't want to surrender our phone numbers to Google because Google is evil. Now, not going into the discussion about whether Google is evil or not, but I was asked, how do we solve this? Because we want these employees to use two-factor authentication, and we sort of want to try to avoid having to buy them a phone and buy them a phone subscription and pay for that for the sole purpose of a single two-factor authentication login once a month. That's going to be expensive. It's as simple as that. Well, I thought about it a little bit, and then I asked them, well, these employees, what kind of phones are they using? And we found that the vast majority were using Android phones. So problem solved. We told them that, well, your phone's operating system is already being made by Google. So you have already given your phone number to Google, and problem was solved, and everybody signed on to the two-factor authentication by SMS. The reason for not doing anything else is that it requires, like, if we are going to do TOTP with some kind of authentication app, that requires a smartphone, that requires an app installation, that requires training in how to use it. And while it may work really, really good for personal accounts, it gets much harder for shared accounts. And we have lots of shared accounts in our environment, marketing, sales, and so on, especially have shared accounts. They need to do shared accounts. And then the question is, well, if you have 15, 20 employees with access to the same account, who is going to be responsible for the two-factor authentication? Now, a partial solution to this, because it's still sort of, people don't understand the concept and you have to teach them, which again is difficult with a very high turnover rate of staff, is that you can do delegated access instead. So you don't give away the username and the password for a specific shared account. You can, as the account operator, say that several people will have access to this account, this email inbox, without having to know the username or the password specifically for that account. And we are working to change that away from lots of people knowing the password for a single account into using delegated access. You can do this in G Suite. I also assume you can do this in other systems as well. And it's highly recommended, but do know that it takes time to deploy and teach your staff how to do it. And again, being the guy that I am, of course, after many, many years of seeing all kinds of crazy, stupid, and very insecure solutions for doing authentication and two-factor authentication. WebAuthn and FIDO Alliance showed up with U2F and WebAuthn, and I was like, finally, something I think I can believe in. And I do. I use security keys for a lot of accounts personally, and it's really, really good for personal use. For corporate use, it is difficult to deploy. And especially in our setting, and there are also, I assume, many other settings as well, or different types of businesses where this can be very difficult to do. Security keys are usually physical, like you can see on these pictures. There are also options for using your phone. Android actually has the capability of working as a WebAuthn authenticator integrated in the operating system. And with Apple iOS, the options are also coming in through apps and so on. But here's a typical hotel reception of us. This is one of our hotels in Oslo, a new one. And one of the issues that we have here that we are using computer screens with the computer integrated in the screen. And we have the USB ports on the back side of the panel. Then you don't have to see the cables and everything sticking out back there. But when the backside of these computers are facing towards our customers, our guests, if we insert a YubiKey or some kind of hardware authentication key into a USB port, it will be on the back of the display, making it difficult for our staff to reach them around the screen. We could use USB extension cables, which is that's just cumbersome to do. And also there's of course the risk of thieves, of bad people stealing or destroying those security keys. So we need to figure out ways to do that. Not only that, but we also have to educate people how to use them, not to take them with them back home, and so on. And that is something I have done just a little bit of experience with, and I still can't really see a good way to deploy it across more than 200 locations and several thousand staff. So, if anyone have good ideas on how to further progress on this, I would love to hear from you. Unless you're in sales, of course, then, don't call me. So all this is work in progress. This is the status that I've got for you right now. And by that, I say thank you for listening in. And Well, you can ask me now if the system works, or you can leave comments in the YouTube video, or here are my contact details if you can figure them out. Thank you.